dolus indeterminatus. That means indeterminate intent. That is the case where I want to kill somebody. I don't care who it is, I don't care where it is, I don't care where they're from. I just poison the substance, and whoever it kills, I wish for them to die. I am still a murderer in that type of case. So we're dealing with murder. In addition to that, we're also dealing with terrorism. When you are engaging in any terrorist activity, you'd be guilty of terrorism. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is PJD from the PJD Law Firm. Today we have an interesting consultation for you regarding food poisoning of children and families in and around Soweto and Johannesburg, specifically food bought from spaza shop or so-called Pakistani shops. I'm joined today by two of my staff members, and that is Mr. H.D. Hector Charles, and that is Ms. Mbalenhle Kwabe. There's no problem with the mic. That's how you say it. Kwabe. So the questions that they had for me were, number one, where is this poison coming from? What are the legal implications? What can be done for the kids? What can be done to the people that are selling this poisoned food? The facts that we have so far, and they might be totally wrong, disclaimer there, is that number one, there are shops in locations situated around Johannesburg. These are usually what we call tuck shops, in some cases what we call Pakistani shops. And children and families are buying snacks from these shops. They, in certain instances, have died from food poisoning. In some instances, suffered severe health consequences as a result. The Minister of Health has conducted an investigation into what has happened, and he has found that what we call organophosphates were contained in the bodies of some of these victims. Organophosphates are a rodent control pesticide which does not belong in any type of food item. So one of the questions that we also need to ask is, how did this get into the food items that were purchased, or was it just around the packaging? So without further ado, let's get into the topic. Given those facts, if they're incorrect, please correct us in the comments below. Well, the first question is this: how did it get into the food? Okay. So there are two types of snacks that you can usually buy from a tuck shop. The ones are the where there's a big bag, and then they take the items from the big bag, these chips, keep skopas, mazimba, and then put them into these small little packages, tie them up and sell them in these little plastic bags. Those, obviously, there's ample opportunity for contamination. If you have just handled pesticides and then you come and handle these type of chips, then you might just contaminate those type of chips. That is the one type of scenario that might be totally innocent. Well, not innocent, but still quite negligent, because if you're dealing with something poisonous, do not deal with something edible right after that, or without at least cleansing yourself in the intervening period. In addition to that, the other way of these goods becoming contaminated is that we might have packaging that is already pre-packed. We are talking about chips that you buy. We know all of these different brands. I don't want to name them just in case I'm accused of defamation, but we know the type of chips that we buy at these shops. They already come packaged in foil packaging. Before they even arrive at the shop, they are already packaged. The only thing that the shop then needs to do is to take them out of the boxes onto the shelves, and from the shelves you select it and then you go and pay. There's no handling in between. In that case, what might happen is that the contaminants are outside the packaging if the packaging is sealed. In that situation, we might have negligence, but we also might have something a bit more sinister, a bit more nefarious taking place. Because in order for the food inside to become contaminated by contact with this other substance, someone might have to put it in there, injecting it, opening the packets and resealing them. But the easiest way would just be to take some of this pesticide and then inject it into the packaging. In that type of instance, what we are dealing with here is not a case of negligence. What we are dealing with here is a case of terrorism. This is someone that does not care what happens to these children. This is someone that knows that if you consume these goods, you might quite likely die. That is categorically a form of murder, and with the specific form of intent called dolus indeterminatus. That means indeterminate intent. That is the case where I want to kill somebody. I don't care who it is, I don't care where it is, I don't care where they're from. I just poison the substance, and if it kills, I wish for them to die. I am still a murderer in that type of case. So we're dealing with murder. In addition to that, we're also dealing with terrorism. When you are engaging in any terrorist activity, you'd be guilty of terrorism in terms of South African legislation, as well as many international conventions from the UN and other bodies. Terrorism is simply engaging in a terrorist activity, and terrorist activity is simply, as an example, where you want to inspire fear, you want to commit violence, and that your intention is to overthrow a government, to induce fear or terror, or to coerce those people to either convert their actions or convert their beliefs. That is a more or less loose definition of terrorism. So if I am intentionally spraying pesticide into chips and specifically putting them in tuck shops in underprivileged or previously disadvantaged communities, in order for the children and the people that consume those type of chips to die or to suffer severe health consequences. And in doing so, I want to create fear, I want to create terror, I want to create pandemonium. Then I am engaging in a terrorist activity, therefore I'm guilty of terrorism, and I am a terrorist. So we are dealing with murder. One step above that, we are dealing with a potential act of terrorism. What we can do for the children, something quite different. When we are dealing with the children and you have given me a product, a consumer product that is defective or dangerous, then in terms of the Consumer Protection Act, we don't care whether you were negligent, like we did in the first example, where you were simply handling something poisonous and then you moved over to handling something edible. Your negligence is irrelevant. We simply look at, was there poison? Is there a very good reason for there to be poison in there? No. It wasn't labeled properly. You have not complied with the Consumer Protection Act, and harm has resulted to these children and to these families. Then you are guilty of dealing in defective products, and then all the damages they have suffered is something that you would need to pay for as a supplier. It doesn't matter whether you did it intentionally. It doesn't matter whether you did it negligently. It doesn't even matter if you were aware of what you were doing at that point. But for murder and terrorism, your awareness, your intent is quite important. So those are more or less the three consequences of this type of conduct that we are dealing with. Okay. Any questions? We'll start with the lady.
Okay, which minister is in charge of making sure that inspections at spaza shops take place? Because I think that's what most South Africans are wondering. Who's supposed to be regulating these people?
One of the things that South Africans tend to do is that we always think that government must help us, right? And in South Africa, we've got what we call civil processes, which is processes between me and you and me and another individual. The government facilitates, like when I sue you for something. The government's not technically involved, it's not driving the process, it just makes the courts and the processes available. And that's a civil process between two individuals, two private citizens. So we need to be aware that that is a potential remedy as well. We don't only have to rely on government. Then there are what we call public processes, which is criminal law, administrative fines, arresting them, confiscation, etc. Those are state powers that they have over private individuals and private companies. So sometimes what happens is that because we are unaware of the civil remedies that we have, we sometimes appeal to the government for it to do something. So what we can do, if there is a murder, if there is terrorism, if there is harm that has been suffered, you as an individual do have the right to take legal action against the suppliers and the perpetrators in order to make sure that you at least recover the damages that you have suffered. If you want to go the state route and you want to appeal to the government, then certainly you can do so. There are various ministers that you can appeal to. When it comes to the Consumer Commission, you can go to the Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition. The Department of Trade, Industry and Competition has various bodies within it, one of them being the Consumer Commission, Consumer Tribunal, etc. They can do these type of investigations, make findings, give fines, etc. Then there's obviously the Minister of Health, that I think is the one that actually did this investigation. So that's one place you can go to. If you believe that there are other illegal things happening there, then you can certainly go to the National Commissioner of the Police. This falls under this falls under the Ministry of Safety and Security, but you'd usually go to the nearest police station, report that crime, and then they can investigate. If you believe that it's illegal or undocumented foreigners dealing in this, there's obviously Home Affairs. If there are work or occupational health and safety standards that are not being complied with, then you can go to the Department of Labor. So it just depends on what you want to complain about. But since we are dealing with a potential murder, since we are dealing with a potential act of terrorism, I would suggest that go to your nearest police station. They will then do what we call a JOC, which is a Joint Operation Committee, and they will identify the relevant departments that they need to go on these raids with. So murder, terrorism, civil damages, also potential of, if it's just negligent and there was no intent to kill somebody, then we'll be dealing with culpable homicide.
Okay, but since you've already mentioned the Department of Health, right, being one of the regulating authorities, how are these occurrences becoming more prominent when one of the authorities is the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, SAPRA, is supposed to ensure that food safety is enrolled? So I can get where you're coming from when you're saying that, like, we can't always rely on the government to fix our problems, but at the same time there needs to be regulating authorities to make sure that things don't happen, to prevent things from happening.
You must just understand the value chain of a product. So when an item is sent in for testing to make sure that it's fit for human consumption, right? We obviously send in samples, and the understanding is that all other products produced would be similar or at least comparable to that particular sample, right? Now, if I am a terrorist and I'm sending in a packet of chips, I'm obviously going to send it without these organophosphates inside. So when the testing is done, the packet of whatever Zimbas that are being sold, that complies, and they have done their job. But what we are asking now is that if they have complied, but then they have added something afterwards, then they would be breaching these regulations. Right? But the packet of chips themselves, as they are in an untampered format, those would certainly comply. And I do think that those governmental bodies are doing what they're supposed to be doing. However, what often happens in the case of tuck shops is the following. The product that is being sold to a tuck shop is actually an end user product. This is the pack of chips. It's meant for your home consumption. It's not necessarily meant for home consumption and then take some of it and then sell it. But what often happens is that they then take that, prepare the food, repackage it, and then sell it to the public. That is not a Ministry of Health issue. That is usually a municipal issue. Because in terms of your municipal bylaws, you would usually have to have a certificate of acceptability for an inspector to come from the municipality into your establishment to have oversight over your processes and say, this establishment is acceptable for the production or repackaging of food before you sell it to the product. If you are buying, I don't know what they're called and how much they weigh, I think it's 5 kgs or something of skopas or mazima or mashwamsham or whatever, right? That is something you're then selling. If you're going to be selling it to the public, you need to get permission from the municipality to say, I'm taking this, I am processing it again, and then I'm selling it to the public. Similar to what you'll see in every restaurant, in every food shop, every takeaway joint. If you look on the wall, in most cases, you will see that there's a certificate of acceptability, not from the Ministry of Health, but from the local municipality, who comes in and checks whether your facilities are proper, safe, and compliant, in order to make sure that what you're providing to the public is going to be safe and edible. Oh. If you're going into a tuck shop and you don't see that, that means that the municipality might not even be aware that this particular establishment is there. The other thing that you should bear in mind is most of these tuck shops are sometimes at a residence or in a garage or back room or whatever the case may be. The zoning of those properties might not be such that they could have a business operating from their premises. So the municipality unfortunately cannot every single day go out into every single plot and look at every single room to make sure that no one is running a tuck shop. It takes community involvement to say, listen, I see a tuck shop has just popped out in Mazibuko Street. This tuck shop is selling kotas, It's selling chips. It's selling these shwams. It's selling juices that they are making themselves, etc., etc., etc. I want to make sure, I'm the Karen in this case. Do they have a permit? Do they have a license?
Yes, yes.
If you do that, and by the way, one of the authorities that you can report that type of activity to, if you are living in a metropolitan municipality, is the Metro Police, because the Metro Police, unlike the SAPS, also enforce municipal bylaws. Report it to them. Then they would send through an investigator, or at least send them a notice to say, you are conducting a business that's producing food. You do not have a permit. Shut it down, apply, make sure that you are compliant, then you can start again. But for now, stop it. If you continue, we will come and shut it down for you. That's the type of thing that but sometimes it's just happy to have a shop down the road. We don't really care about their compliance, and then these type of things happen.
Okay, but my problem is that, like, for instance, in 2017, we had listeriosis, I think. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that. Yeah, the polony issue outbreak. And that was one of the major outbreaks that we've had that affected every income household. Didn't matter if you're poor or rich or whatever.
No.
But
okay.
Well, they had
They got bacon though.
No, they had bacon. Yes.
Yeah.
So
That
it was
also
there was a certain brand. I think it was Escort at that
Escort,
time. Yes.
Let's not mention the particular brand.
Oh,
Okay, there was that brand.
a certain particular
But
brand.
you must remember that bologna is a compound food that's processed, right? Whereas bacon is something that you get from a certain portion of the pig and slice it. That there's not really much handling that goes into that after you've smoked the bacon. Okay, so I can make bacon at my house in 30 minutes, but I certainly can't make bologna. It's quite a complicated process, and there are many things that go into bologna. So, for instance, a lot of people don't know, but most of your bologna is chicken and fat. Pork is actually quite a small portion of it. But everything that's been cut off is basically made fine, put into a nice little gel. And gelatin as well, mixed together, and then they put it into the solid piece of all sorts of meat. So there's a long process that goes into that. It's
Everything is in there.
It's quite an interesting process. Yes.
No, I mean, like, I understand that, but I think the point I was trying to make is that we already had one of the biggest outbreaks that we've had in South Africa pertaining to food security, food safety, and all of that, right? And now we're having these occurrences of children dying because of spaza shops providing or selling foods that are just not regulated. Clearly, they're not regulated, because I don't remember ever seeing a spaza shop that has the compliance certificate or something. I don't see those things. But also, it's not fair for the blame to be mainly just placed on whatever neighborhoods.
Not
blame, but like accountability, for instance.
Accountability is never on
the residents, yeah.
All I am saying is that you need to show up for life. You need to show up as a citizen, right? And showing up as a citizen says that, listen, we as a society have agreed that we are going to do X, Y, Z. We as a society have agreed that there are going to be bylaws, right? That's why we elected these. If you show up for life, go to your council meetings, etc. Know what your bylaws are. They're all totally available. You can go onto any municipal website, you will find them, right? And they regulate almost everything. Once we have said that, if you see something happening, keep quiet. Not to say that if it happens, it is then your fault. No, it's not your fault. It's never your fault. However, if you don't do something and it happens again and again and again, then we start creating a culture of non-compliance. Okay, because one thing that we can see quite clearly, and in my experience in doing home work for homeowners associations, body corporates, etc., Karens are important. Karens are important. I've been involved in cases where houses have been personally demolished, because Karen said, I don't think that thing has a permit. I don't want my child to be close with. If my child walks by that, it might fall. The chances of that happening are quite slim. But she's not taking that chance.
Yeah, true.
She's making sure. And she's also saying that when I built my house, I had to get this permit and this certificate and this and this and this clearance, right? Why are you just getting to build it just like that, right?
True.
Not saying the extreme Karens that we see on TikTok, but because Karens tend to be concentrated around certain places with certain demographics, we don't see these instances. If you remember where these things happened. They happened in Naledi, they happened in Alexandra, they happened in other places. We didn't see them happening in Bryanston.
True.
We didn't see them happening in Saint, right? Maybe in Edenville, there are different parts, but we didn't see it happening there. Why? Because I can tell you that as soon as a spaza shop comes up at the back of your yard, right? Naomi, who's my neighbor, sorry. Naomi next door would say, listen, anonymously, Peyton did this. I saw him did this. I saw 3 people working there. I don't think